Hello and welcome to the Employee to CEO podcast. I'm your host, Monique Nicole, and I'm excited that you're here. Welcome. Today, you'll probably notice that I have a little bit of a different setup. I'm trying some new things out. As you guys know, this podcasting is new for me, so I am learning and just experimenting a little bit. And I felt like this topic that I wanted to talk about today really, I just wanted to kind of be a little bit more intimate with you guys and up close and personal, if you will. So here I am in my office, sitting on my couch, literally with my pillows and my blanket. Actually, I'll share this. This wasn't a part of my plan, but this blanket I really love. I got it as a gift from IDS, the Interior Design Society, as I spoke at, I think I spoke, it was an event that I spoke at, or I did a workshop or something. And they sent me this beautiful throw. I love it. So my daughter comes up here sometimes and she'll curl up under this blanket. But so thank you, IDS. I appreciate it. But today I want to talk about something that I feel like I wish someone had talked to me about when I was building my business and I was coming up in this entrepreneurial space. And so today we're going to talk about creating a healthy CEO life. Okay. Creating a healthy CEO life or lifestyle that really serves you, that protects you, and that guides you. And I wish, like I mentioned, that someone had shared this with me when I was on my journey. Because I've, really had to kind of learn the hard way and through experience. But I'm thankful for those blessings. I'm thankful for the experiences. So, there's no complaints there. But I think there's some fundamental things that are very important for any emerging entrepreneur, looking to start a business or is in the midst of starting a business or, who's just contemplating. Like there's some serious things that I think is important to have in place or at least have a good understanding of how to manage these things. And so the first thing I want to really start with is your mindset, right? Your mindset is so important, especially as an entrepreneur or emerging entrepreneur, because the mindset that you have to have, living through life and having like the false job security. I call it false job security because that's really what it is. I mean, you know, a job is great. Don't get me wrong. I've had plenty and many. Um, but right. I mean, especially with our economy now, it's like you can get laid off at any time. Anybody could lose their job. Anything could happen. Right. So it's really not like security, but most people think it is. And so what happens is people build this mentality around, or we should say that, the money is going to always keep coming. And it's just not true. Having a job is great. And, some people, you may be building a career, you may be climbing the corporate ladder, and that may be a great thing that's happening. But the moment that you transition from employee to a CEO or to an entrepreneur, right, that mindset really has to change. And the reason is because you are getting a steady paycheck, right? So most people who work a job, right, you get paid every 2 weeks or you get paid every month. And that money's coming, right? So what happens is you condition your mind to say like, okay, when I get paid, I'm going to pay, this, I'm going to pay my bills. I'm going to, maybe go on a vacation or buy that, bag that I want, those shoes that I want. And then whatever's left over, I might save. Like that's the mentality of the average American, right? I'm not saying everybody, and maybe not even you, but that's the average of how people spend. And what's scary about that is that they don't even pay themselves first. That's not even like a concept in most people's minds. And so when you shift from being working for someone, right? Especially if you've been in your job for many years, for a long time, one of the shifts that you have to make is, okay, now, right, my income is determined on my production, right? It's completely production based. It's not because you've signed a contract with someone, right? Because signing a contract with yourself doesn't bring in the income when you're an entrepreneur. It's what do you do? What are you doing, right? What are you producing? Your job pays you regardless of if you produce or not. Now you may have evaluations and they may say, hey, like you need to step it up, or, you're not getting a raise this year because you didn't meet X, Y, Z criteria or expectations, but you still get paid, right? Until they fire you or you get laid off. And so having that mentality that like the money is always coming really can put you in to having a mindset that money is endless. And it also conditions people, I think, to be careless with their money because they think it's never going to run dry. Right. And so, I am a believer and I know that God, wants the best for us. I know that He is my provider. He is my everything. And I wholeheartedly believe that, we are not meant to lack in any area of our lives, right? If you have God in your life. And so I think that that's important to make sure that you're grounded in that, especially as an entrepreneur, because when you start working for yourself, the money is not guaranteed, right? There is no paycheck that is coming every 2 weeks. And that's the reality. And you really have to shift your mindset around that. And what I mean by that is making the shift of, okay, I'm starting this business and this is the work that I'm going to put in with the expectation to produce X, right? And having the faith to know that as long as you do your part, God's going to do his. Now, it might not show up exactly the way that you've planned it out in your mind, right? But God will not allow you to lack for anything. And so it's a very different mindset to have than when you're working for someone and the money is just consistently coming in, right? It doesn't require you to have that extra faith. It doesn't require you to have to push yourself, right? To get up every day and come into your office or wherever you're working and do the work, right? When you have the mindset of an employee, right? It, those things aren't on your mind because you're getting a steady paycheck. And so I think that it's important to start to create some habits, some healthy habits, even while you're working your job, so that that transition is not as tough as it is for most people. And so, some of the things that you can do are, start creating the habits that entrepreneurs have, right, around money, right? Because you'll be surprised that like money is really connected to mindset. And it's funny because one of the not one of but the very first module in all of our courses that I coach on in my program, the Employee to CEO program, is it's actually called Mindset and Money, right? Because the two are very interconnected. Like you can't get money right until you get your mindset right. And so, once there's some things that you can start to do now to condition your mind so that it's not such a like a shock to you when you fully make the transition to becoming a CEO of your own company. And so some of those things are things like, building up your faith. If you are a believer, of whatever, religion or what have you, if you believe in God and believe in a higher power, like that everything comes from God, right? So, having that faith that when you do the work and you put in the effort, that God is going to meet you where you are. And so, I think grounding yourself, meditating, praying, right, spending time with God, and really getting clarity on what it is that He wants you to do, I think is really helpful. The other thing is, practicing things like affirmations. Affirmations are really great because they help you reshape your belief system. Because a lot of times when you're an employee and you've been working for a company for a long time, you start to have this belief system, like I mentioned, that the well will never run dry, meaning, the money is always going to keep coming, right? Also, a lot of times we can think that there's no other way that we can make money without having a job. And this one was one that I struggled with for a long time because I always felt like, okay, even when I was making six figures in my part-time interior decorating business, right? I still felt like I needed my job because I was so conditioned again to that, to all the perks and, to that steady paycheck. And so I think reconditioning your mind to really think about, okay, and I would say not even think, but increasing that belief system in yourself that you can do this. You can start a business and it will be successful, and you can live a lifestyle that you've always dreamed of on your dime, on your business, right? And not have to necessarily work for someone else if that's what you choose to do, if that's what you desire. But that takes a mindset shift, right? Because I know a lot of people, I did it for many years, worked my job, kept my job, even while I still had a six-figure business. Now, is that healthy? No, it wasn't healthy because guess what? I didn't have time for anything else, right? The job took up almost 8 hours for the day. And then, you have to sleep, you got to eat. And then, I would go home in the evenings and work my second job, right? Now, that was my choice, but the question becomes, is that healthy? Is that what God wants for you or for me? Um, and for some that may be, maybe your businesses or your concepts of what you're doing intertwine, or they're really connected. And maybe you can do both. But you really have to be mindful and really just like be vigilant about like what is it that you were purposed to do, right? And so a lot of times it is making a choice, like, what am I going to focus my energy on? And so having that mindset and having that belief system that you can produce something that can replace your job, that will be the thing that creates the life that you want, requires you to have a different type of mindset. So I think thinking those things, saying affirmations and increasing your belief system is really powerful to help you make that mindset shift as you transition. Another area I would recommend that you work on when it comes to your mindset is really focusing on, you know, how do you, um, how do you create thoughts that are positive? And how do you replace thoughts that are negative with positive thoughts? And really practicing that, because there's, it's kind of like, I feel like sometimes you've ever heard that saying, like people are in the rat race, right? Or, people are walking around like zombies, right? A lot of times some people's jobs can be very mundane, meaning it's like Groundhog Day every day. You get up, you have breakfast, you get your coffee, you get out the door, get the kids to school, go to work, do your job, come home, go to sleep, and then rinse and repeat. It's like that for a lot of people. And no shade, if that's the life that you want to live, that's fine. But for people who, are like me, and I'm very creative, like I don't like mundane tasks. I like to be challenged. I like to do different things. I like to create. Um, for me, that's something that like I can't do. And I think when you are, how do I say this? So I think when you're really trying to create something, having a mindset of like abundance and being able to believe that you can create something that you enjoy doing is really important. And, part of that is, being able to have the mindset that, like, yes, I can create something, I can do something that's different. And so that again goes back to having those positive thoughts, controlling your mind, your mindset. And when negative thoughts come in, being able to replace those thoughts with positive thoughts so that you don't let fear come in. Because let me tell you, like literally, fear is, I would say, almost out of uncertainty, behind uncertainty, like the number one thing that really can take a business out, can take you out when it comes to business. Fear is one of those things that's very crippling if you don't know how to manage it. And it all starts in your mind. And so that's why I was saying, really making sure that you can manage your thoughts. And here's the other thing. Sometimes it's not even you, it's other people that are getting into your head. You know, I remember early on, like I had a lot of friends who didn't quite understand like why I was gonna when I shared with them that I was starting my business, my interior decorating business, and they knew my backstory. Like they knew, I had a good paying job, and I was traveling here, and everything looked great, right, from the outside. Like, I was always in a different city, and I never had to like pay for anything. Like, you know, I would, get car serviced all the time, like from work. Sometimes I would work like late hours, and like I'd be on the phone with my girlfriend, literally in a SUV, like being driven home all the way from New York City to Jersey, because I worked until like 10 o'clock that night, right? And my boss was like, no, I don't want you, taking the train. So anyway, those things, those lifestyle amenities, if you want to call them, they look good on the outside, but they're not always what it seems. And I remember telling people like, I'm going to start this business, and they're like, why? Like, you've got a great life. You make, well over six figures. Like, you're single, you're young, you're not married, you don't have any kids. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you even put all that stress on yourself? Um, and people just didn't get it. Like, I'm like, I'm miserable. Like, it might look good, but it got to a point where I became miserable. Now, at first, I was fine. I love my job. I love what I did. Let me just say that. I loved what I did. So, I don't regret anything, but it got to a point where my calling, my purpose was calling me. And I remember telling my boss, like, this thing is calling me. It will not let up. It keeps ringing. Like I gave the analogy of like a phone ringing, and I just keep looking at the phone like year after year, and I would not pick the phone up. And I remember telling my boss, and I had a really great relationship with my boss. I was really blessed at the time that before I departed my job, to have a really great partner and boss at the time. And I was like, I told him, I said, I got to pick the phone up. Like, it keeps ringing. And like, I'm tired of it ringing. And that was the analogy I gave. And that's what it was. Like, I had to pick the phone up. And a lot of times people are not going to understand that. And I remember like really having a really strong mindset and really putting in the work to create a healthy mindset, because there was so much noise and so many people saying like, don't do that, don't start the business, like just stay in your job. Like, you get to travel, you get to do all these things, blah, blah, blah. And so I say all that to say, sometimes you have to have not only a healthy mindset for yourself, but also to block out all of the negativity from other people. Like we all have our own negative stories that we tell ourselves, but sometimes it's to block out what other people are saying to us, right? So that it doesn't become a story that we continue to tell ourselves in our minds. And so just be mindful of those things. Those are some mindset shifts that you can start to work on, and they will help you to condition yourself and condition your mind, before you make that transition. Or if you've already made the transition, great. And it will definitely help you as you continue your journey. So, mindset, super important, and definitely an area to work on. Now, this next area that I want to talk about is all about finding balance. And I think balance is like a very relative word because it means something different to everyone. But what I do know is that it's a continuous effort, right? Because the truth of the matter is that life will life be lifing, and you don't know when it's going to start life. And sometimes life, I always think of life as like, a hill, right? A continuous hill. You're going to go up and you're going to have downs. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. But you never know when those ups or those downs are going to come. So, because of that, it's important to set in balance for yourself. So balance, what does balance mean? Like it just means that you're balancing out the ebbs and the flows of life to the best of your ability. And so that might look like, you know, um, really focusing on your self-care so that when those stressful times pop up, you are able to manage them well, right? Because we've already got the mindset together. So we've got a strong mindset. We know how to kind of control our mind and our thoughts, even when things are not going our way. But when it comes to balance, that's more about balancing everything that's on your plate. So it's kind of like eating, right? They say like, don't eat a whole plate of starch, right? You want to eat, you want to have some vegetables, you want to have a little protein, and you can have a little bit of starch, right? So it's just the same thing. It's the same thing in life, right? You can't just be all work. And balance is really important, especially for emerging entrepreneurs, because let me tell you, when I first started, I had zero balance. I didn't even know what that word meant. Okay. All I knew was that I was on this trajectory to build this six-figure business, and there was nothing going to stop me. Right. I think a lot of that came from living and working in New York City. Like, I built up this, like, I don't take no for an answer mentality. And I still have a lot of that in me. But I just I just was like, this is happening. Like, I'm doing this, right? Regardless of what anybody says. And I think that can be a gift and a curse, especially when you're an emerging entrepreneur and you're really passionate about what you're doing and you're like, I'm going to make this work. This is going to happen. Um, and you can really kind of go overboard. You can get addicted to work. You can, do too much, meaning you're working all the time and you don't have time for family and friends and personal time for you, right? And we're going to talk about mental health in just a minute, but it really can affect a lot of areas of your life. And so, especially as you're building the business, you got to put in time. You have to put in time for other things that feed you and refuel you. Okay. So, balance just looks like, you know, putting in some self care time, doing something that you enjoy. Maybe I know for me now, I'm getting a little older, wiser and cuter. And I like to go for my walks in the morning. Like, listen, I don't care if the street is burning down or whatever. Like, I'm going out and getting my walk in, right? And so that's a part of my self-care. That's a part of creating balance in my schedule. Another thing could be, I love going for me, I love going to the spa. So once a month, I'll go and get a massage, right? It relieves stress. It helps me relax. And it's just a fun like treat for myself. So, balance could also be spending time with the family. Maybe, when you get off work, before you go work your business in the evenings, you set aside family time, to spend time with your children or your husband or your wife or what have you, right? That's balance. Or taking vacations. Um, my grandmother used to always tell this story about my grandfather when he used to work for the post office, and he worked a lot. and, they were raising 3 boys. And she said, she was like, "I used to tell him, if we don't take a vacation next year, you better find yourself another wife." And I mean, we laugh about it now. And he listened, okay? He slowed down and he listened to his wife, and, he found that balance, because she was like, "You better find you another wife if you don't." Right? So, sometimes we have to, put that pressure on ourselves to have some balance, because what happens if you don't is you will look up and you will have lost everything around you, potentially. Your family, your friends, right? Your friends going to stop calling if every time they call you to go out or do something, you're like, "Nah, I'm working my business." you know, they're going to stop inviting you, right? So you got to have that balance. Too much of one thing or anything, as you've heard the saying, is not good. It's not good for you. And it applies to your business and your work. And so I know, sometimes people don't want to hear that, but that's just the truth. You got to have some balance in there. It will make you a healthier leader, a healthier business owner, a healthier boss. If you're going to be, have people working for you, you've got to have some balance so that you can be whole, you can be healthy, and you can show up as the best version of yourself. So finding that balance is important. All right. So another thing that I want to talk about is setting boundaries. Now, this one I know this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because boundaries are imperative. Okay. And as you're navigating things and as you're growing as a person and as a business owner, this is one that you're going to have to learn to do. Because the truth is that no is a complete sentence. Okay. It does not require an explanation. So if you say no to something, you can say no and full stop, as they say it in England. Full stop. No, full stop. Full stop means period. Okay. So, and this is important to exercise and learn this skill set, because what happens is if you can't learn how to set boundaries, right, people will make their problems your emergencies. So whenever they have a problem and they come and ask you to do something, automatically it's your emergency, because now you have to stop what you're doing, right? And attend to whatever it is that they're asking you to do. And one that sets you back. You don't know what implications that's going to have on you, your household, your business, right? And so it just creates a cluster of chaos when you don't have boundaries in place. And so I want to talk about, I want to just share with you a few areas that I know I've experienced that I've had to learn to create boundaries in, that hopefully maybe can help you as well. So the first area I would say is honestly within yourself. Setting boundaries within yourself, because as an entrepreneur, again, you don't have anyone looking over your shoulder, seeing if you're doing the work. You don't have a boss saying, "Hey, when is that report on my desk?" Right? Have you finished it? You don't have anyone saying, "Okay, this is what we have to do," and giving you a plan of what you guys are working on for the week or for the month. You don't have any of that. Guess what? It all falls on you. You have to be the one, not only to create the plan and the vision for your business and for your life, but to make sure that you execute it and you follow through. You are your accountability partner. And so, setting boundaries around yourself and your schedule, I think, are so important. And when I say setting boundaries around yourself, what I mean is holding yourself accountable. So, for example, if you set your schedule for the day and you set your alarm clock for, 6 a.m. so that you can get up, you can meditate, you can pray, you can do your devotion before, you start your day. Well, you want to hold yourself accountable to make sure you get up when the alarm clock goes off, right? Because that's a boundary, right? That's a boundary that you set around not being like that not being negotiable, right? Meaning if something else pops up, or if you just feel like you want to roll over and go back to sleep, right? That's not a boundary you're going to cross with yourself, because you're going to get up and hold yourself accountable and do what you planned and you said you were going to do. Okay. So that's the first thing, is setting those boundaries with yourself. The other thing is setting boundaries with other people, meaning, again, not letting people, dump their stuff on you and you feeling like you're responsible, because you're not responsible for other people, except unless you have children, right? You're responsible for yourself. And so you have to make sure that you are prioritizing properly. And if you have things that you have on your plate, those are the things that get, you know, your attention. And then obviously, I'm not saying never help anyone or not do anything to support someone else. But what I'm saying is creating those boundaries to make sure that you are taking care of the things that are important first, and then setting those boundaries to support others as needed. Okay. Um, Another area of setting boundaries is, with other people, but I would say more so, you know, focusing on like helping others in a way that's healthy, right? So, what I mean by that is, like, say, for example, um, someone asks you to do something, and you know good and well like they can do it themselves. And maybe they just need a little help, but they want you to do it full stop, like full on, right? Like, that's a boundary that you can set, where you can say, okay, I'm going to help you do this, but I'm not going to do it for you, right? So those are like small, those are like small things that you can do as far as setting boundaries around just what are you willing to do and what are you willing not to do, right? And boundaries really just helps you to be disciplined. Um, it helps you to, stay committed to what you said you're going to do. And it really helps you to build your confidence, right? When I started to learn how to say no, like, and unapologetically no, like I really did, become more confident, because I realized what I was doing was I was protecting myself. Even when no one else has my best interest at heart, I have my best interest at heart, right? And so I feel like when you learn how to set boundaries, start to um you really start to like build your confidence level up, because you're getting clearer, like you get clearer on what you want and what you don't want, and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and standing firm on that. So I think that that's really important, setting that balance, setting those boundaries, excuse me, so that you can, be the best version of yourself in the best way and in a healthy way. Okay. All right, so I want to make sure I don't forget. I'm checking my phone. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was mental health. So I know we hear a lot about this, and it's really sad that this is really plaguing our communities. In regards to like people just not being able to work through their mental health, and just people are committing suicide, and just really horrible things. But what I will say about mental health is just really allowing yourself to feel and to explore the feelings, to experience the feelings, and to talk through them. Because I think for a long time, people weren't really like into therapy, right? It was like, that's only for like rich people, who have, problems and they need somebody to talk to. I think that's what a lot of people thought. And so no one, not a lot of people really invested in it. But now I see that that's changing, which is great. And let me just say, from someone who's been in therapy for over 2 years now, it has been a blessing, because I feel like we all need like a mentor or a therapist, or even if you just start with a friend, someone you can talk to and talk through your emotions, I think that's so healthy for your mental health. And so, making sure that you have someone you can talk through your ideas, or if you're just going through something, if you're, feeling something, like someone who you can talk through those things and just get it out of your mind. Like we used to call, I used to, um, tell my staff, like, hey, we need to just have like a data dump meeting where, we just get together and we just kind of dump our data, all the things we're thinking about, our ideas, and talk about them. And I think it's really healthy because a lot of times what causes stress and disease in the body is that we have all these things in our mind, right? That we can't either digest, that we can't make sense of, or that we're fearful of. Um, and the longer it stays in your mind and in your heart and your soul, and just really starts to eat at you, like, unless you're talking to someone, it can affect your mental health. And so I think it's important to really have someone that you can talk through some of these things, especially as an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey, right? Hence the example I shared earlier about, when I decided to start my business, people thought I was crazy. Because they're like, why would you do that? Like, you've got a great paying job. Your life seems like it's great. Why would you, put yourself under that stress to start a business and, you know, put in all that time? Because most people equate like having a business is like not having a life, or, just that's all your life is your business. And I don't believe that it has to be that way. Like, who says that? Now, there are some people who operate in that way, which is why I'm doing this podcast, because I don't want you to have to operate like that. A lot of what we see in culture of someone who's successful is like, that's all they do is work. And I don't know about you, but listen here. Okay. I don't even know how to say this, but I just don't believe it. Like, I think it's garbage that. And this goes back to mindset, that like you have to, in order to be successful and have a successful business in your own right, that your business has to be the only thing that you have or that you focus on. I think that you can have the life that you want and the business that you want, right? And so, I think really having that mindset and, making sure that you're managing your mental health is so important, because as you start to talk through these things and have someone you can bounce ideas off of, right? Even through this journey that can be lonely, it will really help you to be healthy, right? Mentally and emotionally, so that you can be and build the best business ever, right? So, mental health is it's a big one, and the way you can do that really is just checking in with yourself. In the mornings when I get up, I come in my office and I'll do my devotion, and I do several things during that time. I pray, I meditate, I say my affirmations, I read my Bible, and I do all of this in about an hour time span. But one of the other things I do now is I've been journaling, and I just really take like a few minutes to just ask myself, like, how am I doing? How am I feeling? Right. And I'll write it down, and I write it down so I could use it as a reference for when I talk to my therapist. And it's nice because, I'm able to kind of go back and look at my journal and just, when she asks me, so what's been going on? How you been doing? I can say, well, like on Thursday, you know what? I wasn't feeling too good. Like, this is what's going on. This is what was going on. And I was just kind of feeling, sad or, upset because this happened. Right. And so I think we owe it to ourselves to check in on ourselves, especially when you may feel like no one is checking on you. And I think that that's a big thing. And we see this a lot. Like, you see a lot of mental health with celebrities and people who you think have it all together. Like, the young lady who I think was Miss America or Miss Universe, and who committed suicide. Like, my heart goes out to her family and her mother and, her, because to everyone else, she was gorgeous. Like, and, she, had won, in her pageant, and like she was doing, um, all the things from the outside, but she was struggling, like, mentally. And I think that that happens a lot to entrepreneurs, because a lot of times people think that we have it all together. Like, oh, they got it together because they're building a business, um they're, successful, especially when you start making money in your business, right? People start thinking like, oh, well, she's got it all together. Like, and they don't call and check on you. They don't ask you how you're doing. They don't ask you, do you need help, right? Um, and so it can become like really lonely. And so sometimes we have to be our own advocate. So, checking in on yourself and then getting some help or talking to somebody if you feel like, you know what, I'm not good. Like, I need to talk to somebody. I think that that's absolutely okay. And it's the responsible thing to do. And it's the thing that you owe yourself to do, right? Especially when no one else is going to do it. Okay. All right. So the other thing is that I want to talk about is personal development. Now, this one is my favorite because I love like learning. I love reading. I've always been like that kid, and I see this in my daughter as well, like the one who's like always raising their hand. They have a question. I used to be like, all my friends would be like, dang, you got another question? when, and I was in middle school, like I was always the inquisitive one, like, and did not care, like unapologetically, like, yes, I have a question and I need an answer, right? I was that girl. And so, you know, like you can't take me to a conference, because you better believe if I'm going to a conference, I'm going to have a couple $100 so I can buy all the discs, the CDs. Well, they don't sell CDs anymore, but the books, like I'm supporting, okay? I'm supporting, because especially if you have something that I want to learn about, or you can help me learn something, right? I'm going to invest in myself. And I'm a strong believer in that. Personal development. I learned about personal development, honestly, when I worked in the direct sales industry years ago. And they were really big on that. And you had to, because you were always dealing with people. And I don't know if you know, but people are the biggest group of people, or I would say the biggest thing that can break you down if you don't know how to manage people, right? From a leadership level, even from, a peer-to-peer level. Like if you don't know how to navigate people, right, you're going to have a hard time, especially in entrepreneurship, because you can't grow by yourself, right? You have to engage, you have to connect, you have to partner with, you have to network with people in order to grow, right? And so I learned this skill in direct sales because, you were always, we had products that we sold and marketed. And so you always had to be able to connect with people. And one of the biggest skill sets in connecting with people is communication, right? And networking, and not being afraid to get in front of people and talk to them, and, you know, communicate what you have or how you can help them or whatever it is that you're doing. And so, I read a lot of books on sales and, marketing and um, just, connection and leadership and all of these things, because I needed to build myself up in order to be successful in direct sales. Because let me tell you, it's not for the faint hearted. You get a lot of no's when you work in direct sales or any sales job. Even if you're working in sales now, you know that, like, you get a lot of no's. Let me tell you, my not my first job, but my second job, where I would say I made the most money outside of my six-figure advertising job that I worked for many years, was I worked in sales for MCI. I don't know if you remember MCI. They were one of the first telephone network companies that came out and until, AT&T came out and um, took over, and then, all these other ones like Verizon and stuff like that. But they were like huge back in the day, and they had a big call center here, um, actually right down the street from where I live today. And it was like the place where everybody worked. And you had to be on the phone and make sales calls. So we were like an outbound call center, but we called customers that were customers of our competitor. And at the time, Bell South was our major competitor. And, we were taught like how to do, how to talk, how to, sell the products and how to share what we had to offer. And we also were taught how to handle objections, right? Which is probably about 99.9% of the time. Someone had an objection when I would call and say, hey, how you doing? I know you have such and such. I want to share with you how I can help you save on your bill, and then do the whole spiel, right? Now, me, like I'm a talker. So when I get ready to, so like my game it was nice. Like I was one of the top earners on the floor. Not to toot my own horn, but it was true. Like I remember my first paycheck. Oh my God. This is talking about boundaries and priorities, but my first paycheck, I was so excited. I think it was like $1,300. And y'all, I went and actually bought, I remember it was like the coolest, the flyest radio that you can put in your car. Do you guys remember like the radios that flipped up? Literally mine, when it had a remote control. Okay, it was hot. I turned the remote control on, pressed the power on, and literally the top of the radio would come out and flip up. And then you can change the radio station, put a CD in. And then when you were going to turn your car off, it would flip down and it would just look like a black screen. You couldn't even tell. That thing cost about $1,000. I spent my whole check on that thing. But I was so excited. My mom had just given me her car, and it was a bright red 200 SX Nissan. It's kind of sporty, and yeah, I just knew I was it. Okay, with that radio. Now today, would I spend $1,000 on that? Absolutely not. But I say all that to say, gosh, what was I talking about? I was talking about, what was I talking about? I was talking about, personal development. Yeah. Um, so I bought this radio, and, I remember like making really good money, right? Doing really well when I was working at MCI, but it really taught me how to handle no's, right? Because a lot of times I get hung up on. And I had to call these people back because I had to make the sale, right? And so it really did it taught me tough skin. It taught me how to deal with people, how to communicate with people. And it taught me, how to not not look inward when you get a no. Like, and I feel like that's a big part of personal development, because a lot of times we can be really hard on ourselves. We can judge ourselves, and um, we don't give ourselves enough credit. But when you put in time for personal development, you learn how to build yourself up. You learn how to build your self confidence up, so that when someone gives you a no, you know that just means, okay, no. It doesn't mean no forever, you're doomed. It just means no and next, right? Okay, no for you. Okay, who's next? Right? So you build up this personal strength that is needed as an entrepreneur, because you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of disappointments. And so it's important to know how to navigate those. So personal development could look like, spending some time watching YouTube and learning something new. Look, let me tell you, this podcast thing, I love it, you guys. Like, it's the thing that I look forward to doing every single week. And I'm still figuring it out. You guys see, I have a whole new setup today. Like, I had to figure this out today. I was like, okay, I'm going to try something new. Let me rearrange some things, right? Um, And I didn't know anything about podcasting. I'm still learning. Okay. And so I had to do some research. I had to figure out what system to use to record the podcast, to edit the podcast. I had to figure out, okay, what type of lighting do I need? I had to figure out, how do you even put a podcast script together? Right. How am I going to figure out how to get the content? What am I going to talk about? Like, there was so many things. What type of mic to get? Like, I got this mic over a year ago and it sat in my office until I was ready to start the podcast. Right. And so that's what I mean by personal development. You got to be willing to put in the time to make yourself better. And that could be through learning. It could be through, shadowing or, getting a mentor and working with someone, or investing in a coaching program, or, working with someone. It could be a lot of things, right? Whatever the areas are that you feel like you need to learn more or grow in, those are the areas that you focus on, right? And so I know there was one time in my journey of entrepreneurship where fear was just taking over. And it was like I was afraid to do anything, and I had to really do some more like mindset work. And I remember, you know, looking up books to read, like how could I help just, this fear that I was dealing with. And I found this book called Fear by Napoleon Hill. And I love Napoleon Hill. I've read almost all of his books. And it was amazing. It was so amazing. I actually ended up adding it to our book club list in my coaching program, where we read one book once a month, and we focus on different areas. And so, because that was the area I was struggling in at the time, I remember, and even some of my students were struggling in it. So I was like, okay, we're going to focus on fear, right? And that's a part of personal development. Being able to know yourself. And this is where um, the mindset, the healthy mental health and mindset work come into play. Because when you're checking in on yourself and you're asking yourself, okay, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's bothering you? Is there something that's bothering you? Right. And you can answer the question. Like for me, I was able to pinpoint it and be like, okay, I don't know what is going on, but I am like fearful about everything. Like I'm second guessing myself. I'm not doing things because I'm afraid. Right. I'm afraid even when I launch something, like, oh, is it going to work? Like, you know, I had this like enormous amount of fear and I didn't know where it was coming from. And so I had to really check it and do something about it. And that's a part of checking in on yourself so that you can identify what's the area that you're struggling in so that you can do something about it. And that's where the personal development comes in. So, find a book, research, go on Amazon, find a book of an area that you want to improve in, right? Or watch a YouTube video or go to a conference. Like if there's an area where, you want to learn in, I can tell you 2 years, not, has it been 2 years? It's been about a year and a half, almost. Yeah. Last year, I wanted to learn investing. Okay. A year before last, because it took me about a year to learn. I wanted to learn investing. It was something that I had tried years ago. Years ago, before I even started my business, when I was looking for different things to supplement my income, I had some goals that I wanted to accomplish. And even though I was making six figures on my job, it wasn't enough money. I had some big, audacious goals. And I was like, okay, what's another way that I can get another income coming in? And I remember looking into investing. And I remember like learning, the basics, how to read candlesticks and how to chart and stuff like that. But at the time, it was not popular. Like it was like the only people who knew were doing it were like rich white people, no shade, but people who knew how to build wealth. They knew about investing. Like, a lot of times they don't talk about those things in the Black community. And that's just the truth, because our ancestors did know about it, so you can't teach something to somebody else that you don't know, right? And so now it's kind of like the hot thing, but back then it was like nobody was doing it. It was foreign to me. But anyway, I ended up like spending all this money investing in this company to teach me how to invest and just feeling really confused. Like I kind of feel like I just touched the surface. But anyway, I invested, time and energy. It didn't work out. And I moved on to the next thing. And then, over 10 years later, here it is again. I was presented with another opportunity. Someone, who a friend of mine who had a coaching program. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. I invested another like $4,000 into it. And this time it was like the right timing. And I really enjoyed it. And now it's a skill set that I have, right? And what's so great about it is that, I went all in the personal development area in learning investing. And I was able to be one of the people who completed a challenge that was given in the program where the challenge was to make $10,000 in a month in trading, right? And I accomplished that. And I was really proud of myself because that was something that, you know, 10 years prior, I was left confused about, right? But it was something that I wanted to really learn and to grow in that area. And so now I have that skill set for life. And so that's just a great example of like investing in yourself and doing things that are going to help you grow in certain areas that ultimately will help you to have a healthy CEO lifestyle. Okay. All right. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is goal setting and time management. So, goal setting and time management really is just about like getting clear on what do you want. Like, this is the thing that I always um, tell, my students and our members, like to just really focus on as you're starting your business. Because you have to get what you want clear before you can really master the time management piece, right? Because once you start going after the thing that you want, then that's when you got to figure out how do you manage that time? Like, what are you going to focus on? Like, how do you manage the time that you're going to spend to go after the things that you want, right? And so, goal setting is really just about getting clear, asking yourself the question. The first step is ask yourself the question, what do you want? What do I want? Right? It's the thing that I asked myself. I remember when I made the decision that I was going to leave my job after I built my business, right? I set some boundaries. I said, okay, once my business gets to six figures, then that's when I'm going to leave my job. Because what I wasn't about to do was go out here in these streets and think that, I'm just going to build the business as I go and it's just going to start popping off, one day. Like, one thing about me is I'm a very calculated, strategic thinker. And I had to be that way in my job. And so, I take risks, but I take very calculated risk. And I think most high achievers are like that. Like they'll take risks, but we got to make sure we got a plan, right? So the first thing you have to ask yourself, which is what I asked myself when I took a vacation by myself, and some of you guys know this story. I literally went on vacation for 2 weeks in the Dominican Republic and sat on the beach, sipped pina coladas and had my notebook and discovered what I wanted. I just literally took the time where there was no distractions. I went by myself, like I mentioned, and I didn't put any limitations on my mindset, on what popped into my mind, what I thought about. Like I just wrote it down and then I started to kind of fine tune. And by the time I left the Dominican Republic from my vacation, it was like I had a crystal ball. And obviously there was prayer in that, involved in that. I was like, just God, give me clarity because I wanted to go back with a plan, right? At least an initial plan. They always say, you want to make God laugh, show him your plans. But I needed to know, like, okay, what am I doing? What do I want for my life? What is my desire of my heart for my life? And I think that that's really the first place that you have to start in order to set goals because, your goals are going to be based on what you want, right? If you say you want a business, a six-figure business by next January, well, guess what? Okay, now we got to figure out what are the action steps that you need to take in order to reach that goal. And then the next thing you got to do is you got to break that goal down, because that's a big goal, right? Say you want to start a business and you want it to be generating six figures by January. Okay. Well, okay, anything is possible, right? But it all depends on you and what goals you set and what are those action steps that you're going to take to put in the work to get there, right? So then we got to kind of break them down, the big goal, into smaller goals. And so that's what I always recommend, taking one big goal and breaking it down and kind of like moving backwards. So if you say January is your goal to launch the business, well, okay, every month prior to that, every week prior to that, every day prior to that, even down to the hour, what are you going to do to reach that goal? And that's how you break it down into smaller goals, right? And you can write it out. Sometimes I'll just, open up a Google sheet in Google Drive, and I'll just, write out the steps and I'll map it out. Like on this day, on this week, this month, I'm going to focus on these things. I'm going to, accomplish these things. And then that way you can even create, once you get the goal broken down into smaller steps, you can create task lists. And let me tell you, I don't know about you, but task lists are my friend because when I check off something that I've completed, like I feel amazing, right? You feel amazing that you've accomplished something, and it helps motivate you to keep going. And so that's how you manage your goals. And it also helps you to manage the time, because you can look at it and see, okay, if I have the goal if I want to have a goal to start my business and have a business generating six figures by January, well, okay, what does that timeline look like? Right. And how am I going to allocate time to creating those actions so that I can reach that goal? And so goal setting is super important. I always recommend not to set too many goals, especially at the beginning of the year. I would say no more than 3 to 4 goals, big goals, so that it's realistic that you can accomplish them. The other thing is, even down to like my daily routine and time management and managing, what I'm working on, I typically don't put more than 2 to 3 things on my plate in a day, right? Because what happens is if you put too much on the day, yeah, you can carry it over and say, okay, I'm going to do it tomorrow. But you get this feeling that like you've let yourself down, or I get this feeling of like that I'm defeated. Like, oh, I didn't finish this. I didn't get to it. And I'm the type of person that like, I like to start what I finish. And I don't like to start anything unless I know I can finish it. Right. That's just me. That's how I'm wired. And if you're wired that way too, I'm just telling you, don't set yourself up for failure. You want to set yourself up for success, because that's what's going to motivate you to keep going. So when you can put 1 or 2 things on your list and you complete them by the end of the day, you're like, yes, okay, I did this. I can do this, right? And it helps you to keep going and kill the next day, right? So that's one of the things I learned. I used to put a lot of stuff on my list and then just carry it over to the next day. And it just always left me feeling like defeated, just feeling like, okay, I could have did better. Like I beat myself up. And this is a trait, and this is that mindset that comes in, right? This is another thing. You have to celebrate those wins, even the small wins. So if you accomplish something for the day, celebrate it. Okay. So, you know, um, goal setting is important, and making sure that you're setting these small goals so that you can accomplish them. You can celebrate the wins, and you can manage your time. Okay. And let me just tell you, time is a commodity. It's one of the things you can't reproduce. You can't get it back, right? God can give it back to you, but He's the only one who can restore time. So you have to treat it like it's your treasure. Now, this one, it took me a long time to learn. And now I'm so grateful for the time. Like every time my feet touch the floor in the morning, I just thank God. Like, thank you for the time. Thank you for waking me up another day to give me more time to accomplish my purpose, the purpose you've given me. Like I say that every single morning because I know how sacred time is. Um, and when you're an entrepreneur, like you can be very scatterbrained at times. And a lot of times, we don't value the time, I think, that we truly have. And therefore, we don't allocate it properly and prioritize our time properly. And so, if I can kind of leave you with anything, I would just say, like, really treat your time like it's all you got, because it really is. Where none of us are promised tomorrow. And time is that thing that is like, if you steward it well, it'll treat you well. Like if you really are a good steward of your time and you manage your schedule, you set your schedule. I recommend setting your schedule on Sunday evening and making sure that your schedule is set for the week. And by doing that, it really helps you become a good steward of your time, and it helps you stay on track. So that when things happen, obviously you need to leave some room for flexibility because things will happen, right? Like for example, on Mondays, I don't like to schedule anything where I have to be out of my office or away from my desk because I'll unless it's like for a doctor's appointment or something like that, because I like to leave room for those things. Um, Fridays, I like to have my personal time. So, I might not work the full day. I might work a half day and then go do something fun that feeds me. So again, managing your time is really important because when you get time management well, you get balance well, meaning you can balance your life better because you're managing and stewarding your time. Okay. So that's what's going to help you create a healthy CEO lifestyle. And I hope all of these things that I've talked about gives you, some ideas on how to start, shifting things in your life to get you closer to the life and the business that you want, because it is possible, right? It just takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of intentionality, and a little bit of stewardship and discipline. But it's absolutely possible. And I want to thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed what we talked about and you want to hear more, I invite you to like and subscribe to my channel. I drop a new episode every Thursday at 10 a.m. And so I would love to meet you back here every week so that we can converse, and feel free to leave comments or ask questions on any of these episodes so that I can continue to serve you. So I hope this helps. It was a pleasure, and I will see you next week, next Thursday, same time, same place. See you soon.